Hey kids, welcome to Unit 3, Lesson 9, Reversing Arrays, exercise number 3. This lesson has us reversing an array. There is an activity guide that goes along with this. We are not going to do that in this video. In fact, I have a little different way that I'm going to teach this. So let's jump into it. Before we do, let's take a look at our code. We have our array numbers. It is counting down 10 to 1. We're instantiating a new object, myNumbers. It is from the number processor class. Then myNumbers is calling the printValues method. I assume it's in a numbers processor class. Not much else here. Well, let's look through the numbers processor class. We have one array, int values, one constructor. It has one parameter, values, the array right here. We have our print values statement. Print values is just printing off the array, done a little differently here. We have our for statement, still looking through the array. We have an if-else statement, and you'll notice it's just a little different. It's essentially doing the same thing. It's saying if the index is not equal to the length, I want you to print off whatever the value is with a little comma. Else, you're just going to print whatever value and index you're at. If you get through the entire thing, print it off. We'll see what prints off here. I'm pretty sure that's how we get our 10, 9, 8, as we go down. Well, then we have our reverse method that we have to write. Let's run our program and see the output. And we got our numbers to print off just like I said. Let's dive into the code. Let's talk the wrong code first. Kids, I know what you're thinking. This is easy, Mr. Rhodes. We can just reverse through a loop, right? Let's try that. Let's do our for statement, our little curly Q, and we're going to do the same thing we always do inside our for loop, but we're going to do it in reverse. Instead of setting I to 0, we're going to send it to the end of the array. Int I is going to equal whatever the value's length is minus 1. And then as long as I is greater than or equal to 0, we're just going to go I minus minus since we go I plus plus. And then we'll just go system.out.println, and we'll just say whatever the values are at I want you to print off, and we want our commas too, right, kids? So we'll do plus, and then we'll do comma in a little space. Then when I call reverse, I should get the numbers printed in reverse. I'm all done, Mr. Rhodes. Don't need this video. But let's check and see if you're right, kids. Let's go to my console. Let's call this my numbers.reverse, like that. And let's just give us a little space here too. Let's just do a system.out.println. We'll do a little quote here, some dashes. Now when we hit run, we should get it printed in reverse. Well, let's see if we're right, kids. We do. We should probably not make this ln. Should probably be on the same line. Let's run it. And it kind of works. We have a rogue comma that's always going to be at the end that we really don't have. And we didn't really reverse the elements in this array. What we did was we just printed the reverse of it. Would this most of the times accomplish what you need? Probably. But there's a better way to do it. And let's actually explore that way. Here's a visual representation of our array. Instead of just printing down, we want to actually swap the elements. To do that, we want to swap 10 with 1, 9 with 2, 8 with 3, 7 with 4, 6 with 5. I want you to note, if I keep swapping, 5 with 6, 4 with 7, 3 with 8, 2 with 9, 1 with 10, we're back to the same order. So we only got to swap half of them. But if I wanted you to swap numbers, how would you do it? Well, we just can't go x equals y, can we? Because if you remember, I say this ad nauseum, you can only do two things with a variable. You can either print it or you can store it. Once we make x equal y, what happens to the y value? In order to swap, you're probably thinking, well, then we need some temporary variable to hold the values while we swap them. And you're right. How would we write that? We have temp equal x. And we want to swap what? X and y, right? Now that we're storing x as a temporary value, we just want to do x equal y. Now we need the value of y back, right? So we need y to equal temp. Let's get these right here, kids. Looks like we used all uppercase there. Just make sure they look even. So as you can see, to get x and y to be different values, we need a temporary to hold it, to store it, to flip it. And understanding this basic concept is how we write the code in order to reverse our elements. And I can also take this basic language here and apply it if I get confused. Let's go back to our code and write it then. Back here, let's get rid of our old work. And just to help me, I'm going to write out what I had over there. We're going to have our x. We're going to have our y. We're going to set our x to a temporary for our swap. X is going to equal y. And then y is going to equal temp, which is the new x. Well, that's it. X will be my start value. Y will be my end value. And I think it's going to be easier if our end value is the value down here that we want first. So what's that going to make? Well, y now is going to be an int end. We're just going to make that equal to the values dot length minus 1. Now we need to take care of our start. I'm just going to move it down here. Our start is going to be our for loop, what we want to look through. So let's go for, don't forget your curly cues. And this just wants to be our standard for loop, int, and we'll just call it start here to keep it easy. We want that equal to 0, as long as start is less than values dot length. And remember, kids, we don't want to go through the entire array, because if we go past half, we're going to start putting it back to the way it was. We only want to do half the array, and to get half of something, we just divide it by 2. And then we want to increase start by 1. Now we can move what we want to do inside the loop here. And we want temp to be equal to x. Well, we'll make an integer temp, and we'll make that equal to x. X is start, so we just want values at start. Then we want to flop our values, and that's x and y. That means we want values and at x, which is start, and that's equal to values at y, which is the end. And then we want our semicolon. After that, we just want to swap it. And that means y, which is values end, is now equal to temp. One last thing we didn't talk about though, kids, we need to decrease the n1 we're looking at so we don't get the same number over and over again. It means we want n minus minus. If we're increasing on the index, we also have to decrease off the back end, or the length. And there you go, kids. That's how you reverse elements of an array. And as you saw, we just took our very simple math problem and turned it into coding. We're not done yet. We still have to call and print this off to see if we're right. Let's go to my console. We've already called reverse here, but it's not going to print. We have to call that print values from above. So we're going to go my numbers, print values, like that. Now I should get something very similar. No commas. Well, let's see if I'm right, kids. And there you go. The elements are swapped. All the syntax is correct. We just didn't look through elements and print them off. We physically changed their locations. Pretty neat. Kids, key takeaway from this lesson is understanding when we're reversing, we're actually swapping elements. When we're swapping elements, we need to make a temporary variable to hold them in order to swap them. In addition to that, we don't need to look through an entire array, because if we do, we're just going to keep swapping back to the original array that we had. And why is reversing or swapping important to understand? In May, on your exam, you have 4 FRQs. One is on methods and control structures, the other is writing classes, another is on a 1D array, the other is on a 2D array. And typically on the array questions, they're going to ask you either to reverse the order of something, add or subtract an element. So understanding this is very, very important for you to be successful on the FRQs. Again, if you get confused with this, remember, break it down to its simple forms. You just need a temporary value to swap things, and that's all you're doing with this. Hopefully, kids, this video helped you understand reversing methods and why we use this approach. As always, if you have any questions, come see me. Otherwise, I'll see you on the next video. See you later, kids. Bye, bye, bye.